Hey everybody, this is Steve. I just wanted to record a really short video to update you on a couple of things going on. First is that I emailed everyone some brief comments about their grades so far for participation, the discussions, and how that's going. So be sure to go take a look at that. They're kind of repetitive emails because I sort of copied and pasted them on occasion because they say basically the same thing. I think the biggest challenge that some of you are having is just remembering the 4 hour rule. Okay, so what that means is you got to start these discussions on time on either Monday or on Wednesday, typically. Anytime on Monday or Wednesday. And then and then in order to get an A, you have to have at least two responses to other people that are each at least 4 hours apart. So let's say that you post on noon on Monday, your first initial post. If you post again at 4 or 5, and then you post again on Tuesday or Wednesday, that's an A. I mean, in other words, if you respond to people on either Tuesday or Wednesday or later, things like that, just responding to two people. Um, if you don't, then it's not. And if you log in at noon on Monday and you post your initial response, and then you see three other responses, and then you immediately respond to two other people, that only counts as one response. Because again, you got to have, in order to get an A, you have to have responses to at least two other people that are each 4 hours apart. Now, you can have a whole lot more responses than that. And a lot of people do. You don't have to just respond to just two people. But the point is that time is really important because the whole point is of the time is so that you get a chance to see the entire conversation. If you just log in on Monday, post your response, and then post it two again real quick, and then never come back, well, you're missing most of the discussion, right? I mean, it's kind of like showing up to a face-to-face class, saying something in the first 5, 10 minutes, and then just leaving, right? So that's the logic behind the 4 hour rule. Um, the other thing is these posts don't have to be that long. Some of you are writing really interesting posts, but they're also kind of like interesting mini papers kind of thing. So you don't have to go into that much detail. You want these to be more conversational than that, right? You also want to go back to that website assignment. Remember where we're entering in at least a couple of different items, and we're creating a collaborative bibliography of different things that we find in the online in the stream about stuff having to do with AI. Okay. Um, I went back to the website and I basically hid all of the test posts. So the only thing that you're seeing now are actual examples of people's entries onto that bibliography. Remember, you need to have two more, you need to have at least two entries each of you, that is, to that bibliography by the beginning of October. And also remember that the entries all have to be unique. So in other words, if somebody posts an article about, something, doesn't really matter what, that no one else can post about that article or that website or that video or whatever it is. So it does make some sense to start on this early sooner than later because, if there's something that you want to post that you've come across, and you want to make sure that you still can post about that, so you want to do it before somebody else posts before you do, if that makes sense. So you should get onto that pretty soon. Last thing is I just want to remind everybody to start thinking kind of in the back of their heads about what is this research question that you have about AI that you want to try to answer with research, right? That's where all this stuff kind of comes together because you can look at the things that we're reading and talking about as basically starting points for research. Like if you're really interested in, for example, AI companions, we're just barely touching on that. So you could go do more research about that, for example. The stuff that gets posted to the collaborative bibliography on the website, that's all fair game for research. If you see somebody posting something that you think is interesting, might be interesting for your research, by all means, you can use that in your research. If you have something that you have found that you want to share as part of that bibliography assignment, as well as part of your research for your research question part of the essay, you can do that too. But you might as well go ahead and start getting started on it because these things are going to become due sooner than later. And as you'll see after the middle of the semester, we get into some sort of you need to do some updates on like progress that you're making on the research so far. The last thing I want to mention, it has to do with the writing experiments with I think we're getting off to a pretty good discussion about that, but you want to be as specific as you possibly can be. Okay. So, in other words, don't just say something like, well, I asked the AI about my dog or my cat or whatever, and the conversation was fine. No, no, tell us more about it. What did you ask the AI? Which AIs did you use? Because you should use at least two different AI platforms for every one of these kinds of experiments. You should run these experiments a couple of different times. For example, the conversation one, I would have suggest having a couple of different conversations with it. Some of it may be serious, some of it may be goofy, whatever. And you want to share those results in the discussion, right? So be as detailed as you can. Tell us more about what it is that you did with your experiments, because that will come into play later on because you're writing an essay about your experiences doing these experiments. And if you write more now, you can go back and look at it later and see what other people did and things like that. I think that's about it for now. If anything else comes up, let me know. If you haven't got questions or whatever, be sure to ask. Okay, see you later.